Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are
It's
you?
very early, right? A bit early.
7 a.m. Not too bad.
Okay. Winter time, right?
Oh,
Yes.
good morning. Good evening for me. Georgia, thank you. Sorry for my my emails for times and confusion in in times and days. Sorry.
You're fine. No, it's really difficult to keep
Okay.
track of all of these meetings and
Okay.
what time zones they're in.
So thanks for the opportunity.
No worries. Yeah, it's a windy day in Wellington today. So there's maybe a little whistle through my window.
All right. So you are starting your subcommittee soon, right? I mean, you are having the launch, right?
Yeah, we've met a few times. And we've just been we just met 2 nights ago to talk about the white papers. So I'll kind of mention a bit of that and just put a call out for some of the questions that we have and what our next steps are. And then I'll talk about the biostratigraphic framework.
Okay.
I've only got like 16 slides, but I think they're quite dense. So
Okay. Also time for discussion, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, the meeting is recorded. So just yeah. Okay, I think we can wait a bit more to let people join. Okay. So you are now based at GNS, is it right?
Yeah.
Okay.
In Wellington. I just saw Flo's email. That's exciting. It'll be nice to meet next year with kind of everyone. Hopefully by then we've made some progress.
Yeah, so I think the idea is September, right? 2023.
Yeah.
So yeah, still far, yeah, a long time. It seems to me a long time from now, but yeah.
And I know I was quite excited about getting out later this year, but hopefully it'll be a lot easier in a year's time.
Yeah, now it's quite open. So in terms of movements in Europe, so and the conferences are starting to be more in person. There is a big one next week, EGU.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we can leave New Zealand and come back in, and we don't have to do isolation and stuff, but it's still quite like the fear of kind of getting stuck somewhere overseas and like getting COVID just on your way back and then having to isolate in some country. And
yeah, now the virus is spreading a lot. I actually got it a month ago.
Yeah,
it's just everywhere.
Yeah, I had it 2 weeks ago, and yeah, glad I had the vaccines.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, we wait just a couple of more minutes. Yeah, the time is a bit difficult, but I hope more people will join.
Yeah, I think it's always when you know that it's going to be recorded as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I've also seen that you are, I think it's your subcommittee organizing workshops in 2 different time zones, right?
Oh, I think that's Stu Jameson's
Okay, right.
the ABC.
That
Yeah,
seems a good idea, but yeah.
it is. I mean, it's not a massive commitment, is it? Like it's only an extra hour, But I just keep changing mine over. It's particularly difficult, yeah, being in New Zealand. It's either kind of like early morning or very late night to try and get as many continents as possible, but you always miss someone out.
Yeah, it's very easy. It's complicated for countries like India. I found very difficult to. It's a very complicated time zone.
Yeah.
It's it's super complex.
Yeah, it's like if it's my early morning, then like Australia and Asia kind of miss out. But if it's my late night, then like the West Coast of America misses out, which is a lot less people, I think, than Australia, Asia.
Yeah. But I'm glad that the special issue is moving. I'm looking forward. Yeah. Okay, I think we can. Some people are joining. Maybe we wait one more minute. Yeah. Okay, I think we can start. Okay, today we have Georgia Grant from GNS Science in New Zealand in Wellington. She will provide an overview of the chronology and proxies subcommittee she's leading, and she will also provide some an overview in general of the future activities of the subcommittee. So thank you for joining. Go ahead.
Cool. Thank you, Alessandro. Good morning from New Zealand. Today, I'll be talking a little bit about the Instant SCAR subcommittee that I co-lead with Laura DeSantis, and then I'll talk a little bit about a biostrategic framework that I've been working on the last few years with a few characters that I've kind of listed there, and many others. It's something that I've picked up that has been kind of collated and worked on for years. So quite a large piece of work, and I'm still relatively new to it. So it's a large beast to kind of explain, but I'll do my best. The subcommittee is the Southern Ocean Antarctic Chronology and Environmental Proxies. We have a steering group of about 40, I think, and about another 20 kind of just members. We met, I don't know what year it is. We met last year together as a subcommittee just to kind of fine-tune what our aims were, and then we've recently been kind of working on the white papers. But the primary kind of aims of the environmental proxies work stream are about like identifying these key regions and gaps in the proxy kind of knowledge, what those processes are, and the gaps in temporal and spatial, and that will kind of form most of the white paper, as well as what the consultation with the modelling community to identify some of their needs, and ultimately trying to move towards an interactive format of how we can access the paleo proxies that we use to reconstruct environmental variability. And that's like a kind of communication piece for our own scientists in the proxy community, but also being able to provide visuals, I guess, to the modelling community and others to understand what we're actually able to kind of measure with our paleo proxies. We haven't planned too far ahead. I'm sure this will change quite a bit as we go forward because the instant program's so long. So I guess it'll just kind of year by year as we progress, we'll see what those key kind of achievements are as we move forward. And the chronology and correlation work stream that's led by myself and Ryan is, looking at how we kind of develop age models, and ideally developing this systematic assessment of age models for paleo records, looking at, again, where these kind of gaps are, what methodologies do we really need to concentrate on and could be used to better support the modelling community and their needs. So yeah, we met a couple of nights ago to talk about the white papers and what the kind of overlaps between both of our different work streams are, and what some of the needs are that we still kind of need to reach out to the community to help refine that. So as I said, the Southern Ocean environmental proxies work stream will be focused on what those proxies are that are needed by the community, what are currently available, and where are they located. We're both looking at, again, like how do we provide something that it's a little bit easier to kind of find up-to-date review papers. This is obviously not going to be a review. There's too many proxies, too many areas, too many times. But how can we kind of better direct people, and then what are these proxies or regions or time periods that should be prioritized for future work? And that's where that kind of consultation with the community will come in. For the chronology and correlation white paper, we are looking to catalogue current methodologies, identifying what those key barriers are in dating Antarctic sediments, and summarise what we need to really advance that space with a focus on, again, hopefully kind of coming up with some standardisation of developing age models and reporting uncertainties that could be really useful for IDP proposals. If we had a community kind of standard that this is what a really good age model looks like, and this is what a bad one looks like, and how you can kind of advance an age model. So we're still working on what the kind of spatial and temporal focuses of those papers will be. I think the chronology kind of paper is looking to go back to the origination of the Antarctic ice sheets, but the proxies, what white paper kind of have a lot more information to deal with. So they're still working out whether it should be kind of divided by regions or processes, and again, whether they should be focused on a key process that's really required by the modelling community, like in Antarctic ice sheet kind of the extent in the past. So we very much need some input from the kind of modelling community about where their largest gaps are, and what they need from us. And then I guess it'll be a two-way conversation and what we can also provide for them that they may be unaware of. And again, how do we share and communicate that more effectively? And we still have some expertise gaps in these overviews. So we're still looking for people, and we're trying to kind of use those in the subcommittees to identify and nominate some people that we can pull in. So if you get contacted, that will be why. And the reason, I guess, that I kind of offered to run a subcommittee under the Instant program is that, as we all do, have been working with age models and the frustrations of age models, particularly in Antarctic sediments, and how we develop those age models. And I think, just some simple standardization of how we report uncertainties could drastically improve how we develop these age models, but also, you know, looking at more probability analyses and some of the tools that are more available now to refine these age models and improve their resolution and confidence. And so this diagram is kind of just showing an example of, you know, the linear interpolation that we generally have to use with paleomag reversals, the biostrat that originally guides the selection of paleomag, but can also redefine some of the curves. And then, you know, how do we include Astrocron? Again, this is a kind of relatively new tool. I think people are using it differently, and how we include that approach to age model development and standardizing that, I think, would be really useful for the community. So one of the tools or the body of work that I've been focused on for the last few years is this CONOP program, or constrained optimization. And this is a kind of computerized graphic correlation that finds the most parsimonious sequence of events, biostratigraphic events within geological constraints. And so it runs through a bunch of kind of different scenarios and finds what the like best kind of misfit is, like how do you least have to disturb, I guess, the sequence of events that are found in different sediments. And the underpinning kind of process that this relies on is that we never sample the biostratigraphic range of the taxon correctly. We're always going to undersample it. We're never going to find its true first occurrence and last occurrence. And like on that premise, it kind of moves things around to find at what site does it have the largest kind of range, and then forcing the other sites to fit that. And the aims of this is it can really improve temporal resolution of traditional biozones. It has the potential for identifying new species that could be suitable for biostratigraphic datums, and also identifying some species that may not be suitable, particularly because of this biogeographic effect or the latitudinal gradient. The fact that, you know, evolution obviously takes time, and so it's not synchronous. And how can we use this as a framework for our discontinuous kind of shelf sites in Antarctica? So the way that CONOP addresses this issue is we start with kind of figure A, where you have events correlated across 3 different sites, and in some sites they kind of agree, and in others, you know, they might swap over each other basically. And so CONOP will strip back and find all of the sequence of events in each site that do agree, and then it will readjust the ones that kind of don't agree into that sequence. And so it can't check every possible sequence. That would take kind of all of time. There's just too many options. So it just starts at like a random spot and then kind of tests whether it's improving the solution or whether it's kind of making it worse by moving things around. So the Southern Ocean database, that, as I said, has been developed by quite a few people over the years, obviously the original authors, but that's also been QA/QC'd by Denise Kawainik and Dave Harwood primarily, along with a few others. So we have 73 sites in the database currently. 50 of those are south of the polar front, and that's what's been focused on currently for my work, particularly because of that biogeographic effect. So we see quite an offset in the timing of events within the polar front and then outside of it. And we have 5 clades. So we've got diatoms, radiolarians, forams, nanos, and dinos included in the database. And it has 19 independent age models. And so again, this is like a really great kind of framework for, you know, being able to assess via biostratigraphy how this kind of all fits in together for some of those sites where we have limited information. And then this is where it starts to get a bit deep. So the line of correlation is the site adjusted depth. So where we kind of move from the original site and where those events might be located, as CONOP kind of readjusts that event to higher up in the section, it will give it a new depth. And so we use the original age depth models for that particular site. But that event will obviously now be kind of dated a lot younger than it was previously identified if it was located down here. And so we use the CONOP composite, which is ultimately just a ranked sequence. It's not a depth sequence, it's just an ordinal composite that is the synchronous kind of sequence of events across all of the sites. And then we use the original age models that are interpolated to this kind of adjusted depth for each site. And that provides us with a number of age models. So one of the difficulties around kind of dating this CONOP composite is that not all of the age models are kind of going to agree in terms of the sequence of events. And this has been a key focus for, I think, the last year, trying to understand how we can best objectively date this composite. So this is ultimately what all of those various age models look like. So there's 19 of them. On the bottom, we have the composite position. So again, this is just a ranked sequence of all of those events. We start at kind of 0, the most recent, and that's obviously where we have most of our biostratigraphic events through that kind of Pleistocene. And yeah, so that's about half the record is kind of contained in the last 5 million years. And you can see that, yeah, these are all kind of agreeing. And then as we go further back in time, we have less records and less records with age models. So a kind of quick interpretation, because we have generally that kind of continuous sedimentation through the Pleistocene, we have more confidence of the PMAG interpretations, and the sequence of events is therefore generally in agreement across all of these sites. There's a few kind of artifacts in these longer lines. The one thing CONOP doesn't do particularly well is the very kind of recent period, because it's organizing first occurrences and last occurrences, and as you get closer to today, there's a number of extinction events or events that are taxons that are still present today. And so it kind of has a chunk of information that basically all finish at the same point. And so the rearrangement of that is relatively meaningless. At this point here between Angel 2A and ODP 744, the offset is due to the fact that the sites both have the same biostratigraphic events, and CONOP has ordered those in this sequence. but they have differing age interpretations, and there's a number of reasons for kind of why that might be. Angel 2A at the bottom of the core is determined by not tephra ages, I think ages of basalt, which are potentially reworked. And then the offset between 744 and 748 due to the fact, so because along this x-axis the composite they're not aligned, it means that they don't have the same biostratigraphic events, but they do have the same age interpretation. So I think in this case the paleomag reversals have been identified as the same in both sites, but Connaught would suggest that the biostratigraphic events aren't actually overlapping. They have kind of different biostratigraphic events in each site. So the question is kind of what do we do with this? Again, acknowledging the huge amount of effort that goes into developing an age model, through many years and many iterations. That's not really, I didn't feel comfortable at least kind of selecting one age model and saying that I trust that one and the other ones are rubbish. They, I think, in general can actually all be correct at their individual sites, but obviously when we're looking at a Southern Ocean wide framework, we need to kind of select a single representative age. So this is work that Nick Sullivan, who is a PhD student of Stephen Myers at the University of Wisconsin, has been working on with me. And so what we have here is basically the same information that I just showed. It's the different kind of control points through time and through the composite rank. The axes have been switched. And what he's done is taken 10 random points, checked that they meet superposition, and then done random pathway through there. It's using like a normal distribution of kind of data points between those 2 points. So as it's deciding its pathway between 2 randomly selected points, it's kind of like it's generally going to be almost linear, but there's always the possibility that it could be, kind of really steep or really flat in the case of unconformities or really high sedimentation rates. And so from that, again, ensuring that all of these pathways meet superposition, we ultimately get a kind of pathway that we can determine a mean and a standard deviation from. This is still kind of just work that we've been doing in the last week, really. So working out a few more of the issues that we have, including getting rid of some of these artifacts. And so what can we do with that? This is looking at kind of biodiversity measures, so extinction rates, origination rates, and what that turnover is of all of those different clades through time. So we obviously have some cyclicity here. I think the window is looking at about a moving window of 1 million years. And I think we can kind of improve that resolution, but this was just a quick draft from James Crampton at Victoria University of Wellington. And what that means, he's looked at before a graptolite sequence, and again what those origination and extinction rates look like, all that turnover. And so this is for 430 to 470 million years ago. But there was a very clear pacing of these Milankovitch grand cycles. So the 2.6 million year cycle is pacing, modulating eccentricity, and the 1.3 million year cycle is ultimately pacing obliquity amplitude. And so a quick kind of comparison of the turnover that we have out of the new CONOP database in comparison to a bandpass of the LISCAR insolation solution. And so that's been bandpassed to just above 1 million years. What's the variability in insolation at cycles of longer duration than 1 million years? And this is the raw turnover. But I think in general, we can see that there's some good agreement. And particularly what we're looking to do with Astrocron and CONOP is kind of merge the two in some way. We're still working through those details, but we really want to, the opportunity here is to use Astrocron as a test of our age model. So if we're seeing kind of major offset between these peaks, then, we can potentially adjust the age model and improve that. And so the next steps, we're still, as I said, refining the age model and the methodology. Ideally, what we really want is to be able to provide, a quite simple methodology for people that this could be used in like an individual site age model. If we have more uncertainty in our kind of PMAG boundaries, along with our biostrat, tephra, whatever else is available, how can we kind of use statistics more effectively to provide, rather than a single age model, providing more of a cloud and some pathways that could be improved upon with Astrocron in different sections. But I guess, just rather than settling on a single age model line, acknowledging that there's a bit of movement really in there. So we'll be publishing this as a database, hopefully this year. We didn't want to kind of publish it as a paper and with interpretation, because hopefully a database is a little bit easier to update, and B, it's taken kind of 3 years to get here, and there's a lot of detail in there, and we want to be really transparent about that, along with the methods that we've used to develop the age model, and there's endless amounts of kind of work that this can be used for, and we certainly can't do it all. So hopefully it can be used better by the community as a whole. And that can be using it for old and new sites. So if you have, if you're out on an expedition, you're able to kind of use this as a guide. And then we also need to figure out how we kind of incorporate new data. That's always quite difficult. We'll probably primarily be looking at the orbital pacing of the biodiversity curves, as well as, you can dig into individual clades. There's obviously different times in Antarctic history where, because of like large environmental controls, we've seen this wax and wane of taxon, and what does kind of orbital drivers have to do with some of that variability. And we can also look at stratigraphic coverage, and again, because we have a single framework, because we have like independent sequence that we can correlate from site to site, and ultimately an age model of that sequence, we can start to look at different areas of Antarctica that have experienced, high segmentation, and areas that haven't. And again, what does that tell us about the Antarctic continental evolution? Can this fit into some of the seismic models and help refine some of the seismic correlation? That's something that I'm super interested in working with people on. So yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, very exciting. A lot of work, I guess, ahead, it seems. Okay, maybe I can start with just a general question. If doesn't anybody have a question or in the room, or I can start maybe. Yeah, I was thinking about in terms of new sites, also connected to the white paper, to the first one, I think, of the two white papers. If you have any suggestions about new sites, especially for those geographical regions where there are very few sites.
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. There's the map. Yeah, I guess so. We're slowly incorporating the Ross Sea stuff. Obviously, that's kind of still being analysed. It's quite difficult to determine some of this kind of continental biogeographic effect. And again, one of the things that like really needs to be drilled down into, looking at some of the shelf to slope variability, and whether you have things like a different sequence of events occurring in the Ross Sea versus Prince Bay, for example. But yeah, I guess there's quite a lack of sites around the kind of West Antarctic Glacier edges. But is that on the books for being drilled soon? And then beneath Africa, again, it's always great to have these kind of transects through, and that's eventually will slowly move across the globe. I'll be developing a New Zealand database, which is going to be, I think, quite tricky once you start getting into the complex kind of ocean circulation patterns. You start to see quite significant biogeographic effects. So yeah, having transects, and this helps with I guess generally the site correlation, and ultimately climate events and how we can better correlate those from Antarctica to kind of beyond in the Southern Ocean and in the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. I think that's a kind of key issue, is that we have methods for dating the sediments in Antarctica, and we have methods for dating stuff outside of Antarctica, and Astrochron is one of the primary tools that like Stephen and Nick are looking to try and work out how we can use those better to link climate events and when those are happening in Antarctica versus when they've been recorded elsewhere across the globe.
Yeah, I was just looking at the Pacific, which is empty. Yeah. Except the Ross Sea, but yeah. Okay. Is there any question? Maybe. Okay. Claire, if you want to say it, or I can read it as you want. Okay, maybe I can read it. Okay. Do you see market divergence in age models associated with the opening of the gateways?
That's a really good question. I hadn't thought of some of those, really large external drivers, and that could be, driving some of the differences that we see. Here we go. This is why we share our science. That's a really good thought, Claire. I'll have to think about it. Oh yes, Trevor. We did reach out to them, but we haven't managed to wrangle any of the data off them yet. But I mean it's past kind of moratorium now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So at some point, but again, I mean it does need to be community driven, because of the level of expertise required to identify these events accurately, and make sure that they're not being misinterpreted. We don't really want to I guess run an exercise of just extracting available or shipboard data. We need to have that expert opinion and what is correct and what some of the issues are. I guess that's definitely one of the problems I've faced doing this. With all of the different sites and all of the different intricacies, you can't kind of just treat data as simple as I guess in other instances of data mining. It needs to be considered in some of the broader context, like gateways.
Do you know where they are in the Amundsen Sea? Are they on the shelf, or do you have an idea? No.
Yeah, they're in deeper water because they couldn't. They wanted to go to the shelf that year, but it was too ice infested, so they had to drill in the deep water sites.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that's a shame. Yeah, there was like very heavy sea ice during the past few years. So yeah, in the Amundsen. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Instead, the Ross Sea was ice-free completely during the last. yeah, very unusual.
So could one of the outputs of the group be some kind of best practices document for people on cruises like RADP cruises to I guess first of all the best way they can construct age depth on the ship based on all of this background data that you're working with here?
I think it's quite tricky with CONOP because whilst we can kind of have an output of biostratigraphic events and dated and those uncertainties for each of those events are going to be quite large and probably a lot larger than what most biostratigraphers will agree. But it's less about the exact age of that species or taxa, and more about where it is really located within an individual site. So we can provide that kind of age, but if you're drilling and and recovering and looking for biostratigraphic events, if that data was put into CONOP, then CONOP might shift that datum, and say, well, you found it here, but actually that's far too late. It should have been kind of found a lot earlier. And so we've been again trying to work through how we provide that kind of information and a use, practice of use, I guess, with that information. But yeah, definitely the subcommittee is hoping to, I think, you know, just really simply reporting uncertainties regularly would be a vast improvement. Again, not being stuck on a single kind of, you know, straight line correlation between 2 points, but allowing a bit more kind of degrees of freedom, so that as the age models, you know, are worked on, or as the data is worked on, and the specific ages of certain sediments might kind of slightly change, they're only slightly changing rather than dramatically changing. I think we've all kind of worked on sites where the age models have, you know, been shifted around like quite significantly. And I think there's probably, you know, in some of the cases of PMAG interpretation, more than one solution, and having that possibility up front would potentially remove some of the misinterpretation of aging of sediments. But yeah, it was Denise that suggested just having a standard practice for IADP would be super useful, whether that's for like pre-proposals as well as for on the ship, I guess, and afterwards, like, you know, and nothing new, but I guess just agreement by the community about how we actually go about this. You know, what does the best age model look like, and what information data do we need to have there.
Okay. Yeah, there is a comment by Claire Hallen in the chat. She suggests, I think, to compare your turnover results with some of the molecular clock work on divergence speciation of benthic animals.
Yeah. I'm not a biostratigrapher myself, and this is the point where that's getting a bit over my head, but I'm sure James Crampton would be very excited by that comment, and I'll pass it on to him. We've certainly been talking about what can we kind of compare this to, and again, how synchronous do we expect things to be across the globe? But yeah, Claire, I mean, this is really why we want to just publish it as a kind of data set, so that people can ask all of these questions, because there's so many different things to kind of look into, and we're never going to be able to do all of that, and I just think it's of more benefit to the community to have it out there. Yes, Rafaela, that's so the way that I've actually ended up developing the final composite was starting with a whole bunch of offshore sites where we kind of like assume like a little bit more continuity, and then slowly adding in the shallower sections. But so that with those shallow sections that kind of have major unconformities can be basically like spread apart by the deep core sites, and then they're not being incorrectly interpreted as, or basically, I mean, when you have an unconformity, you have obviously a whole bunch of first and last occurrences occurring at one horizon, and so we need those offshore sites to pull that apart. But yeah, as you say, whether that's correct or not, between different kind of shelf sites and the overall ocean, and yes, and I guess so again, one of the things that is quite difficult. So this has 280 taxa, which is therefore like 560 individual last occurrences and first occurrences. And for each of those, you need to go through and kind of like check latitudinal gradients and really, yeah, some of these kind of ocean basins, and whether there's a constant offset between where those events occur at one location versus another, and that's something that still hasn't been super drilled into either, but it would be super interesting to see, and very helpful. Again, endless amounts of work to do on this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I guess there are no more questions. But I very enjoyed the way how you presented, this introduction to present and future work. I think this should be the direction for the next presentations by the other subcommittees, and try to generate a bit of a discussion for future plans. I guess that's the way we want to do it. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you, and thanks for all of your comments. Definitely, lots to think about, and really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. That's not always the most exciting thing to talk about. So it's always nice when I have an opportunity to discuss it and get some feedback.
Thank you, and I think generating this database is exciting for the community and Easton in general. So I see. Claire's just commented the same thing, and definitely, again, just having a single framework where everything that can be compared is massive, and it poses the question of how do we do this for other kind of proxies or work, because the constant I guess depth, scale, comparison or correlation, it's never that simple. So it's nice to provide a independent kind of measure that you can actually sit there and have all this data in one place. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Georgia, and we'll see each other, I guess, in a couple of months with another subcommittee in July. Looking forward, and have a good day and good night for the Europeans.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Thanks.